So the Oklahoma Sooners, they weren't the only basketball team to kind of have a weird game on Monday night. You look at what the Thunder did against Atlanta, there you have another one. I mean, there are NBA games that entertain you, and then there are moments inside those games that explain everything you need to know. Oklahoma City's 140 to 129 win over the Atlanta Hawks. It was loud, it was fast, it was filled with shot making, star power, and obviously enough scoring to satisfy anyone scanning highlights for the next morning. I picked the under, so I wasn't satisfied. But none of that's the point. That's not what we're talking about here. The point is the point in this game with Oklahoma City. It lives in the 12 minutes after halftime. The 12 minutes that I think reminded the NBA why the Thunder still set the standard for what real control looks like within this league. Because ultimately, games themselves, they don't crown champions. The individual quarters of those games, that's where championships are formed. And I think this game was lying to us at halftime. It was. Because for 2 quarters, Atlanta made Oklahoma City look uncomfortable. The Hawks did exactly what undermanned teams are supposed to do when talent gaps exist. They spread the floor, they shot early, they shot often. They dared Oklahoma City to chase pace instead of imposing their own structure. And for a while, it worked. At halftime, the Thunder trailed 74-70, and Atlanta had rhythm. Their arena, the energy was kind of weird, and the game felt closer than the rosters suggested that it would. That moment right there, that's where the separation between good teams and champions begins. Not in avoiding resistance, but in how a team responds when the game asks a real question. Oklahoma City didn't answer immediately with a run. They answered with intent. I mean, the third quarter, it was more of a declaration. The 30-11 stretch in favor of Oklahoma City that opened up that third quarter. It wasn't fueled by hot shooting or whistle luck. It wasn't a random burst of momentum. It was structure reasserting itself back into this game. Atlanta wanted to win from the outside. Oklahoma City wanted to win from everywhere else. And that difference philosophically is why the Thunder didn't just take control of the game. They removed Atlanta's options. This wasn't about shot making. It wasn't about decision making. It was about Oklahoma City doing what they do. And I mean, look, SGA, he solved the Hawks. He finished with 39 points. I mean, that's what the box score is going to tell you. But that's not the story here. The story is how he scored those points. He didn't chase threes to match the volume that Atlanta was jacking up. He didn't rush possessions to keep pace with the Hawks. He just hunted space. He hunted mismatches. He hunted defenders who didn't want to defend vertically for 48 minutes. Every time Atlanta stretched Oklahoma City's defense outward, Shai went straight through the middle. That's not scoring. That's quarterbacking. That in the third quarter, SGA dictated where help had to come from. He forced rotations. He collapsed lanes, and every adjustment the Hawks made to stop him, it opened up something else: a cut, a drop off, a weak side collapse that never fully recovered. And that's what they do. Champions, they don't just score; they make defenses choose poorly, make wrong choices. And control isn't about shooting, it's about pressure. This is when Oklahoma City separates itself from the rest of this league. Too many teams mistake shot making for control. They believe that if the shots are falling, they're dictating the terms, but the Thunder understands something deeper. Control is about pressure. The kind that builds quietly, the kind that forces defenders to think it half a second longer than they want to. The kind that turns spacing into stress. And in that quarter, Oklahoma City, they didn't outshoot Atlanta. They outdecided the Hawks. Every Atlanta three came with attacks. A body in the lane, a rebound that was contested, a sprint back on defense, or a physical reminder that the next possession, it's not going to be easy. And pressure compounds. A team worried about rim protection doesn't close out as hard. A team a team whose defense is collapsing inward, it doesn't communicate cleanly. And a roster missing stars, they don't have a second answer when the first one stops working. And the Thunder exploited all of that. And once again, it was Chet Holmgren. I mean, there's an impact here that goes beyond the numbers. He finished with 24 points and 3 blocked shots, and that's what, again, the stat sheet's going to show you. But his third quarter impact was far more subtle and far more important. Not a guy chasing contact, not a guy who's overextending, not a guy who's gambling for highlights. What he did was he just occupied space, vertical space, horizontal space, psychological space. Atlanta had to think twice before they attacked the rim. People driving hesitate. Floaters kind of drift off. Kickouts, they came a little bit too late. That hesitation is everything. So Chet didn't necessarily dominate possessions, but he dominated decisions. And for a player, let me look at him, honestly, still early in his NBA life, that is grown man basketball. Another guy we called out going into this game was Jalen Williams. I mean, this dude was a quiet stabilizer. And every great team has a player who just kind of connects everything together. And for Oklahoma City, that player, I think, is Jalen Williams. His third quarter impact wasn't explosive. It didn't scream, hey, everybody look at me. But it stabilized everything. He secured rebounds when possessions needed to end. He drew secondary defenders without forcing shots. He punished passing lanes without gambling. When the game threatened to drift toward chaos, Williams kept Oklahoma City operating on rails. That's your depth. That's your championship depth. No highlight explosions. Trust, although he did have a nice dunk. But I'm talking about trust when the moment tightens. Everyone knows where to stand, when to cut, how to punish mistakes without forcing the issue. And guys like Jalen Williams, they run that. And for the second game in a row, we saw a huge advantage in the paint. And it was philosophical. It's not accidental. The Thunder finished with a 70-36 advantage in terms of paint points. So, I mean, that's a statement. Not an accident, a statement. Against a team that launched 54 three-point shots, Oklahoma City refused to engage in a shooting contest. They treated every Hawks jumper as an invitation to respond with something more demoralizing, a layup, a dunk, a free throw, or a stop that turned into transition pressure. It wasn't flashy, but what it was suffocating. And that's how you break teams who rely on rhythm more than their depth. And you know, yeah, Atlanta makes a late push, but it doesn't really matter. Because the Hawks cut it to 129, 125 late in this game. On paper, yeah, that looks like tension, but the reality is this game was already over. Because Oklahoma City wasn't searching for answers anymore. They had already found what they needed in the third quarter. And that's the difference between teams hoping to survive and teams that know exactly where to go when that margin begins to tighten. So the Thunder didn't panic because they'd already proven something to themselves earlier in the night. They knew where the leverage lived. Now, I panicked because I had the Thunder covering and I had the under. So yeah, I panicked, but the Thunder didn't. They went back and back and back to what they were. And I think this win to me is about identity maintenance. So it's not record padding. It's not offensive fireworks. I think it's about reminding the league and themselves and us who they really are. I mean, Oklahoma City is still young. Yeah, they're the defending champs, but by NBA standards, they're still a very young team. But they no longer play young when the game turns uncomfortable. That third quarter against Atlanta was a reminder that this team doesn't need perfection. They don't need perfect conditions. They don't need your help to dominate. They just need clarity. And clarity for this Thunder team right now, it lives inside the arc. So the league needs to be paying attention to this. And here's the reason why. Because the NBA is going to continue to chase spacing, pace, and shooting. And Oklahoma City certainly has those tools as well. But what separates them is their willingness to counter trends instead of obeying them blindly. When opponents go small, the Thunder go strong. When teams spread the floor, Oklahoma City collapses it. When the moment demands patience, they slow just enough to make defenders uncomfortable. That's championship muscle memory forming in real time. And the third quarter, it tells us a truth. Atlanta, it gave Oklahoma City a test, not of talent, but of style. And the Thunder, they didn't just pass it, they turned it into a lesson. So yeah, that third quarter wasn't loud. And again, not screaming to be written about and spoken about, and probably not as much as I have even. But what it did was that third quarter told the truth. And the truth is this. The Thunder, they don't just win games anymore. They decide how the games are allowed to be played. That's the mark of a team that knows exactly who it is and exactly when to remind the rest of the league. And that's why those 12 minutes after halftime, yeah, Oklahoma City once again showed why the standard still runs through the Paycom Center.